Hello everyone, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with the next video in our How to Play series on the German destroyer line. This is the T-22. The T-22 is the lead ship of the Type 1939 Flotten Torpedo Boat class, also known as the Elbing class in the Western world, the rest of the Western world. And that's because these ships were built by Schischau of Elbing in Germany. There were 15 of these ships completed in the late 1930s and 1940s for the Kriegsmarine. They are affectionately named T-22 through T-36. The Elbing class was comparable in effectiveness to the other medium-sized destroyers from most nations, but there was a few notable differences between them. The type and number of guns was lower than their contemporaries, with the 10.5cm guns being notably smaller than most nations' 4.7 or 120mm and 5-inch guns, 127mm. The primary design consideration was for the Elbing class to be the all-around multi-purposed destroyer escorts capable of launching powerful torpedo attacks, lay mines, and provide anti-aircraft support for ships in the German Navy. The largest design change for the Elbings over the preceding class is that the Elbings employed a compartmentalized machinery arrangement which was designed to improve survivability from torpedo hits, but the complex machinery arrangement proved to be unreliable in actual practice. In terms of service history, the 15 ships of the class primarily saw action fighting in Western France, from Western France into the Atlantic, with a few of them making it into the Baltic Sea in the later part of World War II. Ships of this class are responsible for the sinking of the HMS Charybdis, which was a Dido-class cruiser off of Brittany in 1943. In 1944, T-24 sank the Canadian destroyer HMCS Athabaskan. I don't know if I said that right, but of the 15 ships, only 4 survived the war. T-23 was given to the Marine Nationale for operation in the French Navy and served until 1955, when she was scrapped. T-28 was also given over to the Marine Nationale and served with the French Navy until 1959, when she was scrapped. The T-33 was given over to the Voyenno-Morskaya Flot, or the Russian Navy, to serve in there until 1958. When she was scrapped. And T-35 was taken in by the United States and served in the U.S. Navy until she was scrapped in 1952, with parts being sent to France for the repair of the 2 that the French Navy had. In terms of their in-game playstyle, the T-22s do not reflect their real-life counterparts' success. The success in-game hinges entirely upon your ability to use torpedoes effectively, as her gunnery is flat-out terrible. The torpedo arrangement is very effective, though, and it boasts one of the longest-range torpedoes of Tier 5 that also does quite respectable damage. The T-22 is also relatively agile and stealthy for a ship of her size, but unfortunately this ends the true strengths of this ship. Her guns have only one redeeming feature, and that's that they're capable of performing a full 360-degree sweep without having to, turn around and go the other way. So you can basically sit and rotate in a circle, and the guns will stay pointed at whatever it is that you are aiming at. The rate of fire is good, however, gun damage is outright terrible. The 4-inch AP is incapable of penetrating soft-skinned cruiser hulls at all but the shortest of ranges, and the AG frequently shatters on the superstructure of the battleships that the ship would normally engage. The gun angles are also extremely awkward, not because they can't fire at decent angles, but because you don't know where the guns are capable of firing without having to look really far away from the center of your screen during the engagement. You have to look all the way down at the indicators in order to see when the guns can actually engage. And that can be very, very frustrating to get used to. This means that T-22 is best played as the quintessential torpedo boat, with guns basically ignored in all but the most desperate of situations. In fact, I would argue that the Minakaze, Kamikaze R, Fujin sisters are all actually significantly better gunboats than T-22 is, owing to the fact that at least the guns do damage. T-22 guns definitely do not. Alright, let's look at some stats. In terms of hit points, 11,300 hit points, up to 16 millimeters of armor. The main battery consists of 4 single 105 millimeter 45 caliber guns. They have a 10 kilometer firing range, 4-second reload, 84 meter dispersion, 1200 HE shell damage, only a 5% fire chance, and the AP 2200 damage if you happen to be close enough to actually get a citadel off on something. The shell velocity, 780 meters per second. Hoy, that's slow. These things make US 5-inch guns look, basically lasers. In my opinion, anyway. The torpedo tube setup is 2 triple torpedo tubes, so an awful lot like Mutsuki, in that, you have the less effective arrangement, even though you have the same number of torpedoes as most of the destroyers in this, at this tier range. Of course, some of them have a configuration where they actually have more torpedo tubes but are only able to launch upwards of 6 at a time. Or they're just super short-ranged. The torpedoes have a 7.5 kilometer range, 62 knots speed, 13,700 damage, 1.3 kilometer detection range. And like I said, this is probably one of the strong suits of this ship, and having a 68-second reload time on top of that is also much loved, in my opinion. That is about the only, like I said, the strength of this ship, and it really requires the enemies to be very cooperative with you on that. In terms of anti-aircraft defense, the ship does have AA. However, it's just not worth specking into. Out of all the battles that I played, I ran into a couple of Tier 4, Tier 5 matches in which there were 2 carriers on a team, and over the, half dozen or so games that I played, I was only able to shoot down 3 or 4 aircraft in total out of all of those games. So, anyway, let's look at the AA. We have 4 dual 20mm flak Zweilings. We have 1 quad 20mm flak Vierling. A 37mm flak LM42, 2x2 of those. You can look at what those guys look like there. Go up in here, look at the flak Vierling. Yeah, buddy, that guy looks frightening. It's a shame he doesn't do as much damage as you would think, though. And then, of course, our 4 single 4-inch gun mounts are dual purpose, and we'll see the reasons why in the actual battle video when you see these things traverse through their around the ship. And max speed of 34.5 knots, turning circle radius of 540 meters, 2.9 second rudder shift time, detection range by sea of 5.7 kilometers, 2.7 kilometer detection range by air. Alright, let's go look at our upgrades. In the first slot, I am running Main Armaments Mod 1 for the 20% reduction in the risk of your main battery being incapacitated, as well as a 20% reduction in your torpedo tubes being incapacitated, plus 50% hit points to both your torpedo tubes and your main battery, as well as a 20% reduction in the time it takes to repair them. The other option at this tier that I would consider running is Magazine Mod 1 for the 70% reduction in the chances of your ship getting detonated. Of course, with recent proposed changes to detonations only being able to happen on ships with 75% of your hit point pool or less, this is going to seem less likely to be useful to me, but this is there certainly if you are out of detonation flags and need detonation resistance. In the second slot, I'm running Propulsion Systems Mod 1 for the 20% reduction in the chance of your engine being incapacitated, as well as a 20% reduction in the time it takes to repair them. Another honorable mention here is Steering Gears Mod 1, which is the same as Propulsion Systems Mod 1, except for your steering gears. And the choice between these two depends entirely upon which ones you personally do not like losing. I run Propulsion Systems Mod 1 because I find that even with Last Stand, losing my engines means I'm crawling away at a really slow pace as opposed to blazing away, which means I'm more likely to die than if I were to lose my steering gears, which if I'm moving at a slow pace, the steering rate doesn't really help out that much. And so for me, losing my engine is far bigger detriment, and so that's why I choose Propulsion Systems Mod 1. In the third slot, there's actually, I would say that depending on how you wanted to set this ship up, there's at least 2 options here that are good. I'm personally running Aiming Systems Mod 1 for the 7% reduction in the dispersion of the main battery, as well as a 20% increase in the torpedo tube traverse speed. I think the reasons why someone would choose this are pretty obvious, but increasing the torpedo tube traverse speed is always nice. It allows you to use those torpedoes a little bit more effectively if somebody were to, say, come behind an island and surprise you. AA Guns Mod 2, I could see a case being made for AA Guns Mod 2 for, improving that AA gun range, but quite honestly, I really wouldn't want to spec the ship into anti-aircraft because it doesn't get defensive fire to really drive the point home further. Now, the wiki page, interestingly enough, says main battery mod 2 for the increase in traverse speed, but I find that the traverse speed on this ship is actually quite good, and it really doesn't need improved traverse speed. The 5% hit to your main battery load time is basically negligible with this low of a reload time. And that's part of the reason why I really don't see this as being a necessary upgrade, in my opinion. So I personally am running Aiming Systems Mod 1, and I think it's probably the strongest of these upgrades for this ship. Alright, let's go look at the ship in a battle video. Alright, so T-22, like I said, its primary strength is going to be in its torpedo armament, and relying on your torpedoes, even at Tier 5, can be a bit of a struggle, especially if you're not well practiced at using torpedoes. And I definitely think that can cause a high level of frustration. Now, this is a Tier 4 through 6 match, and there's a fairly decent number of battleships, but more interestingly enough, there's actually quite a lot of destroyers in this. And when it comes to destroyer versus destroyer conflicts in the T-22, you're really best off having a large amount of support, because you're just flat out not going to out DPS anything. And so at the beginning of this, we team up with an Ernst Gade, and that actually is a very good pairing for this ship, because your smoke is pretty comparable in terms of time that it's deployed, but more importantly, the Ernst Gade has its has hydro acoustic search, which allows you to detect torpedoes that are coming into your smoke, as well as just detect other ships in general. Also, T-22, like most of the low-tier German destroyers, has a train whistle for its horn. So that's awesome. But, okay, we're going to team up with the Ernst Gade over here, and we're going to create ourselves the true Kriegsmarine destroyer fleet. So that's what we're going to do. Obviously, Ernst Gade we will cover in the next how to play video next week. So stay tuned for more Ernst Gade action. But overall, the ship's torpedo reliance makes it kind of a liability in a destroyer versus destroyer fight. It just depends. One of the things that's really, really annoying about this ship is the gun angles, and you can see here, well, this isn't quite perfect, but you really do have to expose a large part of the broadside of the ship to use all of the guns, and then on top of that, you can't really kite effectively with it either, because your rear gun is the only thing that can fire straight rearward. So your number 3 gun cannot. Obviously the number 1 gun can't, and obviously the number 2 gun can't. And so that means that in order for you to fire, you're going to have to be paying like special attention to what guns you can actually see. But here's what the guns look like when they traverse through the full 360-degree arc. You can see they go way up, act all crazy like. It's one of those things that I wish the U.S. destroyers were capable of doing in this game, because I believe they can, so there's no reason for them not to. So we're going to kind of let the Ernst Gade take a little bit of the lead here. Oh boy, there's a butchering of the German word for destroyer. And that was meant to be in team chat. We'll just say that this game starts off pretty rough, not going to lie. So we're kind of chugging along here. The Ernst Gade, I'm pretty sure, has popped his hydro, and I don't know. I guess I don't know that for a fact, but it would not surprise me one bit if he had. And going to launch torpedoes there. So there's the Ernst Gade taking over the lead. We've launched torpedoes at this enemy Ernst Gade, and you can see, look, we can only get 3 guns to bear, and I'm practically broadside for crying out loud. So that's kind of frustrating. So we switch from the Ernst Gade to the Fusion, and we're going to take out the Pan-Asian Destroyer, not because the Pan-Asian Destroyer is, you know, surprisingly more lethal or anything like that, just because it is important to take out enemy destroyers. He's the closest, so that's what we'll use. You saw there I tried to use a little bit of the AP on this ship in order to try and boost the damage output on these thinner skinned ships, and it really doesn't work. And look at how far broadside you have to be in order to use all 4 of your batteries on this. Just nuts. Nuts! So now he's broadside again, so we'll switch over to AP. Deep water torpedoes are of no concern to me, Mr. Fusion, so don't mind me while I completely ignore. There you can see the AP is actually doing respectable damage, but the target had to be perfectly broadside in order for it to even be remotely close to effective. So, still engaging here. We've got ourselves some smoke that we could play with if we wanted to, but really we've accomplished what we set out to do, which was to offset their destroyers and take one of them out of the fight. Unfortunately, we lost one of our own in the process, so that's kind of an annoyance, but not really the end of the world per se. We do have the enemy kind of pushing off on this eastern side. Of course, the map is Trident, in case you didn't recognize it. And go ahead and we're going to launch... they're widespread, and they're widespread for a reason. Mostly because at this point I'm looking for area denial more than anything. And we're going to sit in the smoke and we're going to shoot AP at him. Now note, he's 6.3 kilometers away. Now if this was a US destroyer that I was in, and I was shooting at an Omaha 6.3 kilometers away, the AP would do pretty good damage. Now, this Omaha just went kerplooey before ever getting a chance to really respond. And that's the disadvantage to coming out broadside to one battleship who is prepared for him. So, what's left here is, well, we've got ourselves some Joyman destroyers. The Ernst Gade that I was shooting at earlier is over there. We're going to try and engage him while maybe getting lucky and being able to launch an attack on this New Mexico. Although I highly doubt it will be able to get successfully there. We're going to continue engaging the Ernst Gade just because he's low on hit points and I'd like to see him dead. I can always deal with the New Mexico in a different fashion. So there, we fired our last salvo off. And, oh, hey, that last salvo came down from orbit and managed to penetrate and do some halfway decent damage. So firing off at the New Mexico there, you can see we're using our stealth to really get in there tight. Boy, 100 kilometer detection range difference there. New Mexico is sailing in a rather predictable straight line. We got a long ways to go before before we're able to effectively deploy smoke and shoot at him. Oh, and that's a rip. There's 4 torpedo hits for sure, and you can see there we got the kill. I don't know why we didn't get the devastating strike, but, you know, hey. We're not going to complain about being able to nuke a New Mexico completely off the face of the earth. So from here we have a couple of different options at which we can go. One, we have this New York that is really all off on his lonesome. Really don't know why. Or we can go and try and help our forces run down the enemy over on the western side. Now, the ship does have just enough speed with speed boost enabled to really effectively get both places. But I really think the New York over here is a much better threat. He's obviously off by himself, and I'm not entirely sure that he's... maybe he's more aware than I originally anticipated, but I get the distinct impression that he's relatively new to the game. Of course, we are up to 29,350 damage, 2 kills. We got 3 torpedo hits is what it claims. There would have been 4 had he lived. I think the Hatsuharu managed to get a torpedo on him. That's why I didn't get my dev strike. But, yeah, judging by the way that the indicator isn't moving, I think we've got ourselves a destroyer-friendly target. Of course, the French Eagle there panic smokes because he's being spotted, and I don't know if he knows where from. That's me, by the way. I'm just spotting you, using what little spotting range the ship has as an advantage. I think the only ships at this tier that are actually less likely to be spotted are the Kamikaze, Kamikaze R, Minakaze, and Fujin. I think all the rest of them are pretty much guaranteed to be spotted first. This New York definitely exposing that he is sailing in straight lines. And, of course, I launched torpedoes. And that's when the indicator starts moving ever so slightly. Well, maybe we'll get lucky here. We could probably have gotten just a smidge closer to him to really launch these torpedoes, but it's really not necessary. At this point, you know, we're more or less off over here just trying to finish off one of the last of the battleships. And looks like we're going to get at least one torpedo. In fact, I think that's all we're going to get. I think he spots them. Yep, you can see he cut his speed there real quick. Each one torpedo ends up flooding, which means that he's going to repair it. And 25 seconds from now, we'll be able to launch yet another torpedo attack. Now, most people would be sitting here panicking and spamming. I'm really, quite honestly, not. I'm off over here basically all by my lonesome. I've got a Cleveland here that's dealing with the Ernst Gade and the Eagle on the enemy team, not the French team. And so, really, there's no risk to me at all to launch torpedoes at this New York. So, you can see there I launched a set ahead, and really I should have launched it to the rear, but it's alright. So, Mr. Ninja Gaming, here's your YouTube debut. But, overall, you can see the torpedoes actually stack up and do quite a fairly good amount of damage. And that's really, like I said earlier, about the only strength that the ship seems to honestly have. And it's a really, really weak outlook. It really is. But being the only destroyer at this juncture has some advantages. So there's one torpedo, two floods. That New York is going to flood to death. Oy, yay, yay. Well, at this point, I think he's kind of getting, I'm apparently getting very salty. I had a lot of really bad games in this ship, and yeah. Anywho, he's shooting at me, or at least attempting to. I kind of feel bad at this point. We're going to go ahead and we're going to engage him with our guns. We got really nothing left to lose. Launch another set of torpedoes. Might as well engage with guns. It's going to be a while before he's able to really effectively repair that. Yeah, he's shooting at someone else, so... well, he's trying to shoot at me anyway. Here you'll be able to see, you know, just how incapable the ship is of really doing effective damage with the guns. Nothing but shell shatters. And the shells are impacting, you know, roughly the superstructure. Some of those are impacting on the barbette armor. That makes sense, but switching to AP, and the AP is surprisingly effective against that ship. But hey, we got ourselves a liquidator out of this whole ordeal, up to 84,213 damage, and now we need to make a decision on where we go. Our Britannia is successfully fending off our cap from the impending doom that is the Ernst Gade. And I'm going to try and help out Mr. Ninja here and see if maybe he's new to the game. But we don't end up getting an actual response from him, if I remember correctly. So, oh boy, we should really go help out. So, Britannia finishes off the Ernst Gade. That leaves the Eagle, Mutsuki, and Giulio Cesare as our only targets. Looks like our Arizona is over there dealing with the Giulio. Congo is dealing with Mutsuki. And that leaves the Britannia and I to handle the Eagle. So we've chased ourselves off into a corner, and that's a little bit of a disadvantage. But, like I said, this ship has enough speed at this tier, and it's relative enough anyway, that there's no reason that we can't successfully get into a fighting position once again and join up with the rest of our team. So, there's my, hope that maybe, Ninja, you'll see this, and hopefully get a little bit of help out of some of the videos on this channel. So 6 torpedo hits, 4 floods, 84,213 damage. But we're not done yet. What else could we possibly do? All that's left are 2 destroyers, and one of them is French. Well, we must go chase down the baguette launchers. This is obviously what the Germans do. When we will do it with the most efficient package we possibly can, which, by the way, is not this ship. So, you've seen, out of the 47 shell hits here, we've managed to get a grand total of 0 fires. We have had 3 incapacitations, which I think, I'd have to go back and watch the video again, but I think all those have been from launching AP at things, not from HE. So, AP, play this ship an awful lot like a Kizuki, in that if it's broadside, you shoot AP. If it's angled in, you struggle with HE. That's probably about the best tip that I could possibly give for the guns on this. So, Congo running into the Eagle. Uh-oh. Oh, that's not a Congo, that's a König. Well, my apologies, König. Please accept my my deepest condolences for my idiocy. Apparently I can't read. Actually, I think the text on the minimap is probably a touch too small, but really this König has got a lot of guts, because he's charging deep into the smoke there. Good on him. So, anywho, this battle is getting pretty close to being over. Not a whole lot else really going on, aside from hunting down 2 destroyers, and, well, you'll see. The Mutsuki definitely does not do a very good job of actually hiding where she's coming from. Eagle is there, getting hit by secondaries and main battery, and down he goes. That leaves us with the Japanese destroyer to hunt. And Japanese destroyers are particularly stealthy. In fact, Mutsuki might be one of the few tier 5s that is actually stealthier. I'd have to go look at Mutsuki's stats again. Really didn't enjoy that ship either, and it has basically the same problem this ship has, except for one major difference. This ship has 4 guns. They are not 4 very effective guns, but they are 4 guns, compared to Mutsuki's 2 guns, and really bad rate of fire. I kind of wish that Mutsuki had her original 4-gun configuration. So, oh, speaking of, why hello there! And you're low on hit points too. I might actually be able to finish you off before you finish me off. In fact, you not firing guns says a lot. So down goes the Mutsuki, and we finish off this match with 85,053 damage, 4 kills, top of the team, 1,377 base XP. You can see all of our damage was done by torpedoes, and there's the credits and XP screen. Anyway, T-22 is kind of a really not a fun ship to play. It's actually quite frustrating. It's definitely the low point of the German line so far. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you for watching.